Mim and Jess, good morning. I feel honoured and perhaps a little awed as a diplomat to be among such eminent judges, jurists and rule of law experts. But may I express my sincere thanks to the Air Centre and to civil rights defenders for bringing us together. The United Kingdom is well known for its long history of upholding and developing rule of law internationally across the world. And also in this region, across Southeast Europe. And of course, there has been no more important time to do this. And I'd like to make a few remarks about the UK government's approach, because across the region, we've been undergoing a shift from mainly focusing on the more immediate challenges that governments and countries face, not just the pandemic, but also across issues around security, climate, migration, and organised crime. And those efforts and better law enforcement are of course crucial, but as we all know, it's clear that the only way to tackle such issues long-term is through effective rule of law and democratic frameworks and institutions. Now, in preparation for this conference, I was reviewing a UK government report that we conducted on rule of law across the region in 2018, highlighting the state of play 4 years ago, across 7 elements: judicial independence, judicial efficiency, efforts to tackle organised crime and corruption, war crimes prosecutions, media freedom and protection, minority protection, and the asylum frameworks. And you will know better than most how those 7 elements remain essential. And we must not lose sight of them, even at times of emergency, whether that's a health pandemic, significant flows of migrants, terrorism, or security crises. And even more sadly this year, once again, war across Europe. Now, I would like to ask you to continue to be steadfast in your efforts, because we really need to make sure that even when we are challenged by these times of emergency and urgent issues, and we have to respond to those emergencies, we must not miss the impact on human rights and values. Now, when it comes to this region, since the 2018 report I referred to, significant progress has in fact been made on each of these 7 fundamentals. There are certainly challenges, but progress true. And I'd really like to give credit to those, in particular the heads and members of institutions who are championing that progress despite the pandemic and the challenges that and other emergencies have posed. My sincere thanks to Her Honour Judge Vittore Tusha, the chair of the Constitutional Court of Albania, and all her fellow judges here, prosecutors and legal colleagues who are making such sterling efforts to make progress on the rule of law despite those challenges, and also to those of you who are doing likewise across the region. Now, on judicial efficiency, I was pleased to hear last night from His Honour, the Chair of the Supreme Court of Albania, Sokol Sadushi, who is here with us today, the progress made by the Supreme Court of Albania to cut down their backlog, despite the massive challenges, and over the last year, having processed over 10,000 cases. That really is a huge achievement. But I was even more delighted to hear from Judge Mirjana Lazarova her offer to share North Macedonia's experience on how to streamline court processes and effectiveness, and also the suggestions from Judge Dorian Pavli and Judge Lady Biancu for how one can combine multiple cases in the way that the Strasbourg court has done, which can really enable courts to be much more effective at processing cases and decisions. And those experiences and recommendations show how valuable bringing people together in a forum like this can be. But it also is one that will give confidence, of course, to the public, because we need to make sure that the public have trust in the judicial institutions and the work of them. So while those 7 fundamental areas I outlined remain crucial, they also need to form the basis for the work that we do on rule of law across the region. But I'd also like to highlight 2 others, which the UK government is working on currently together with the Air Centre across the Western Balkans. Firstly, on asset recovery, and secondly, on gender in the judiciary. And these form central parts of the UK government's wider commitment to supporting measures to uphold the rule of law and safeguard the independence and the impartiality of the judiciaries across the Western Balkans. But of course, efforts to ensure asset recovery and to advance gender equality were also two key areas which faced particular challenges during the pandemic. And we must, of course, strive to end the business case for crime by stripping criminals of their illegal profits and removing financial gain as an incentive for criminal behaviour. But it's easy to say that and very hard to do, and lawyers and courts at every level have an essential role to play in ensuring the effective prosecution of serious organised crime and the enforcement of asset recovery measures. And we need to accelerate these efforts and become much more effective internationally at joining up and targeting our efforts. In terms of gender issues, the advancement of equality of the sexes is a major goal in states across Europe, but widespread violence against women in this region, the prevalence of gender stereotyping, and the underrepresentation of women in politics and other high-profile roles mean that it is an issue of particular concern in several countries. Again, progress is being made, and many of you here are showing that with your presence. But of course, there is more that can be done. And if you feel that you can make a contribution in either of these two areas, please do talk to Biljana Braithwaite and the Air Centre on how we can involve you and reflect your contributions. Now, as other speakers have mentioned, the COVID-19 pandemic raised serious challenges. And in respect of the fight against corruption and crime, it created new opportunities for criminals and brought new threats and challenges to regional law enforcement. And it also raised questions for all of us over the transparency of procurement contracts and the risk of fraudulent, counterfeit medical equipment being sold to consumers, something which we are all now having to deal with in numerous jurisdictions. And the COVID pandemic also deepened already profound gender gaps, grounded here in the Western Balkans and across Europe. In particular, there's been a stark increase, worryingly, in incidents of domestic and gender-based violence, and indeed femicides in the region. Now, as we all know, the existence of independent and impartial judiciaries are an indispensable aspect in countering these problems, but also ensuring these are done within the wider context of respect for rule of law and human rights. And of course, strong, effective legal systems are also the key precondition for the economic prosperity of this region and citizens more widely. And of course, now we have the prospect in several countries of greater alignment with the European Union norms, which also provides a new prospect. But the European Court of Human Rights underpins even more widely the human rights principles that the whole of Europe will continue to apply. Now, I'd really like to credit all of you for the work that you have done and continue to do to enable justice at such a time of emergency. And as previous speakers have emphasised, the situations forced the judiciaries across the world to adapt and to adopt new approaches to holding hearings and conducting reviews. But it also helped all of us to adapt how we work and find new, better ways of operating. And so now we have the chance to ensure that the lessons are learned from the pandemic and other emergencies. And we hope that this conference will help all of us present here and the wider community of interest to do that, and also to ensure that the fundamentals, respect for the rule of law, are not sidelined during times of emergency. At a time when we do face war in Europe and the consequences that flow from that, we also face a fundamental fight for ensuring that rule of law is maintained and enhanced. And so I wish you all success in your deliberations this week and would like to thank you all for coming together. Thank you. Fala Medert.